Jeffrey Way with nettoots.com, and today we're going to look at using PHP to scan a folder in order to create just a simple kind of portfolio site. So let's take a look at our finished project. And you can see here nothing too complicated. The main tutorial here is going to be showing you how you can use PHP, and we're going to scan a specific folder and then dynamically create the markup. That way you don't have to manually update your HTML every time you want to add a new portfolio item, and at the same time you don't have to use a database if perhaps you have a site that it's just not needed and you don't want to spend the extra cost for hosting. So let's get right into it. I'm going to create a new solution. I have it called Scan Folders. Now I'm going to create a new item, and I'm going to add a new PHP file. And we'll call it index.php. Click Add. And let's get started on our basic markup. So I'm going to create a wrap div called div id equals container. And within it, we need to create a few different items. Let's take a look at real quick what we need. Around this main image that we have here, if I hit Control-Shift-F using the Web Developer toolbar, you'll see that it's wrapped within a div with an ID of featured. So that makes sense to have a wrapping div here, and then we'll have a secondary wrapping div for our options. And actually, we might just use an unordered list for that. So let's go back and write that markup. We'll start with div id equals featured. And within it, we're going to add a little bit of PHP, but I'm not going to do that just yet. And let's go ahead and create our options, and I'm going to store that in an unordered list. So we'll do ULID equals options. And rather than manually insert the list items here, we're going to use PHP to grab that. So I'm going to open up a PHP bracket. And I'm going to say, create a variable called dir for directory, and that's going to be equal to a path to the folder that we want to scan. So for instance, we have this images folder, so let's go ahead and take a look at that real quick just to show you what I have. Okay, first I just have a background gradient. That's just going to be the background for our page. Nothing too complicated there. It's just kind of a light gray radial gradient. And then we have this bottom.jpg, and all that is just a white gray gradient for our options that you can see right through here. Okay, so nothing complicated. It's not even worth going over. And the only other thing I want you to be aware of is I have these two folders right here. One is featured, and that's going to hold the full-size image. And then TN for thumbnail is going to hold a 50 pixel by 50 pixel thumbnail version of each portfolio image. So for example, let's say ultimately the user wants to, he finished a project or he took a new photo and he wants to add it. All that he needs to do is add a thumbnail to this folder and add the full-size version to the featured folder. And he needs to make sure that both of those photos had the exact same file name. So if I took a new picture called a cup, I would put a full-size version in the featured folder called cup.jpg, and then I would also insert a 50 pixel by 50 pixel version of that cup.jpg image. So that's our basic images. I'm just going to open that up real quick just to show you roughly. I just have some static images that are free to use if you are a ThemeForest member. Okay. Having said that, let's get started. The directory variable is going to be equal to a path to our thumbnails folder, which is images/tn. So I'll do images/tn/. Okay, and next I'm going to do scan. A variable called scan is going to equal to a PHP method called scandir. And you see this tooltip, it says list files and directories inside the specified path. So as you can imagine, within parentheses, we're going to pass in a path. And my path is going to be dir, that variable that we just created. So next, we need to, this scan variable is now going to be filled with an array containing, essentially, it's going to contain car.jpg, every single one of these within an array. So if we wanted to access one of these, we could do something like scan and then within brackets 2, and that will grab the third item that is retrieved when the folder is scanned. But what we want to do is we're going to use a for statement to cycle through each image and perform an operation. So what I'll do is create a variable called I equals 0, and I needs to be less than the count scan. So this is grabbing the total number of items that was returned. Okay, so in this instance, it's going to return, 15 or so. So as long as that is less than 15, we're going to run this cycle. And then finally, when it's completed, we'll do increase our I variable by 1. Oh, whoops, extra bracket. Okay, so we'll get started by saying if our scan variable, and we're going to pass in I, remember I is going to be equal to 0 or 1, so we're just saying each instance of the item that was returned. If that is not equal to a period, and also it's not equal to 2 periods, then run some code. Now, when this folder is initially scanned, it's also going to bring back, probably as the first and second item returned, as period or period, and that's simply the folder to move up. Okay, if that's a little complicated, it's just designating the folder. So we want to make sure that we're not returning anything like that. We only want to grab the images. And if you wanted, you could make it more complicated and say also if it ends in .jpg or png or GIF. For this instance, I'm going to be the one controlling it. I know nothing but JPEGs are going to be in here, so I'm not going to worry about it. But you might want to add a little bit for your situation. So, as long as we know we're dealing with an image, we're going to echo a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to echo. First, we'll echo a list item, because remember, this is going to be stored within an unordered list. So we'll echo a list item, and then we'll add an anchor tag. And the href of the anchor tag is going to be equal to, it needs to be equal to the full size image, okay? So I'm going to leave this blank just for now, because we're going to come back and fill this in. So just be patient there. And then finally, our image tag, we want to make sure the image is equal to each of these images right here. So we want to make sure the image is equal to each one of these. So the way we can do that is we can do image source is going to be equal to, and I'm going to close up my quote, and I'm going to append our directory, and then I'm also going to append scan I. And let me go ahead and finish this block out, and then I'll go and explain everything for you. And then also we're going to give it an alt tag, and once again, the alt tag, we're just going to do somewhat of the same thing. Okay, let's take a quick look at this. Image source equals dir. So first, let's just piece this together. Let's just write it, as if we were doing it for real. Image source is going to be equal to dir. So let's go up here. dir equals images/tn, like so. And then we're also adding scan I. So let's say the first one that is returned is car. So scan, and then that index value, let's say it's car. It's going to return car.jpg. Okay, and that's it. That's what's going to be returned, and then alt is going to be car.jpg as well. And that's essentially what PHP is going to turn that code into. So get rid of that. We don't need it. Finally, come back, close out the anchor tag, and then we need to finally close out the list item tag. And remember, we're echoing this, so I need to close out the echo using just a quote mark. I'm just doing it this way to make it a little more simple to see. You can do it all in one line or however you want, it doesn't matter. And then obviously we need to close out our echo statement using a semicolon. Okay, so that should take care of our thumbnails. Now I'm going to go ahead and take care of this specific image. And remember, within the featured, it's going to have the full-size version of this image. So off the bat, we are going to be loading those images in. So all I want to show right off the bat is the very first item that is returned. Okay, so we are going to scan, this time we're going to scan the featured. And remember, the featured file names are exactly the same as the thumbnails. That's the way I chose to do this. The only difference is in the thumbnail, this is a 50 by 50 pixel version, and in featured, the car is the full size version. So all I want to do right off the bat is return that very first one, and then subsequently we will load those images using jQuery and Ajax. So it's going to be somewhat similar. Let's create a variable called featured directory, and that path is going to be equal to images/featured. Okay, so as we said already, as we said, that path is going to be images/featured, and that's going to scan this folder. And then finally, scan is going to be equal to, once again, we're going to scan directory. This time we're going to scan featured directory. Okay, and then finally, keeps indenting that. And then finally, we're going to echo out an image tag. So we're going to echo out image source equals, and we're going to append featured directory, and also scan, and we're going to grab the second one, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. And then open back quotes, end our quotation, and then alt, we'll just call we'll just give an alt of image. That's fine. You can add more if you want. So echo image. Let's do this once again. I'm trying to take this as slow as I can. Image source equals featured div. So we come back here. Image source equals featured div, and scan to, and that's going to bring back. Remember, I said down here the very 0 and 1 are going to be equal to period and period period. So in order to grab this first image, we actually need to grab the second item within that array. And so, for instance, that's going to pull back car.jpg. Okay? And then alt equals image. And that's what's going to be returned. And that's all we need to do for that section, because remember, we are only going to be returning with PHP that very first image. So if I even wanted, I could hard code that in, but I'm going to do it this way to make sure that exactly the first item is returned. And it looks like I made a small mistake. Let me see. I closed out my PHP. Yep, there's my problem. Let's just grab this PHP and put it within my feature div. I accidentally shifted it down. And then here, not sure what I did, but let's just open that back up. Sorry about that. Must have hit some keystroke while I was talking to you. Okay, so it's a little bit sloppy, but I can clean that up later. So that should make some good sense to you. Now let's create a style sheet, because we want to style our markup somewhat. So I'm going to add a new item called default.css is fine. And I'm going to drag my default.css file into my document. Oh, that's right, I can't do it that way. Alright, link rel style sheet, and the href is going to be equal to default.css. And while I'm here, I'm going to add just a little bit more. We're going to import a jQuery our jQuery file. So let's do that next. And we're going to do script type equals text/JavaScript, and source equals JS/jQuery. And we'll call this my simple portfolio. So let's go ahead and run this on the page and see if I made any mistakes. It's very possible that I did. So I'm going to go into Firefox, and this is the demo we already had. Let me go ahead and load up what we're working on right now. So we'll do localhost, and this is stored in scan folders. And this is what we end up with. So PHP grabs that first image, and then here's our second block of PHP, and this is where it grabs all of our thumbnails. Thumbs.db. I may have to get rid of that. So let's go ahead and write a little bit of CSS to style it. So using the web developer toolbar, I'm going to hit Control-Shift-E if you're using a PC to enter edit CSS mode. And we have a blank style sheet, exactly how we want it. I'm going to zoom out just a bit so we can see our entire document. So first I'm going to start out with style our HTML, and I'm going to set a background. And the background is going to be equal to 828282, and that gives us kind of a nice grayish color. And the URL is going to be images/bg.jpg. And I don't want it to repeat, but I do want it to be 50% from the left. Now you can see right here, that is just our radial gradient, and it might look a little sliced up to you because this is a video, but I assure you it's a nice and smooth gradient. And we're placing it 50% to the left, meaning it's going to go right in the middle. So scroll back. Let's style our body, and I'm not going to do anything too much. We're going to keep this as bare bones as we can, but I'm going to set the font family to Helvetica, and then maybe Georgia, and then maybe sans serif. Okay. Let's go back to our document. If you remember, we have everything stored within a container div, and the reason I did that is so I can center my little portfolio area on the page. So I'm going to do container, and I'm going to set the width of my container to 500 pixels, and I'll also set margins to auto. And I guess if we want to be smart and compensate for old browsers, we'll do text align as center to make sure that our container div is centered on the page, and then align the text back to the left. That's an old hack. I don't even know if you need to use it anymore. Just kind of habit. So continuing on, let's style our options and the anchor tags. And this is going to style all anchor tags within our options unordered list right here. So I'm going to set outline to none, and that's going to get rid of that that kind of dotted border that you see in Firefox. For usability reasons, it's actually a good thing. In this case, I'm going to get rid of it. I don't think it's necessary. Continuing on, I'm going to do get all images within anchor tags, and you see because these images are wrapped with anchor tags, they have this blue border. And I'm going to get rid of that by doing border is equal to none, and that's going to get rid of them. Alright, let's continue on, and I'm going to say container. I should probably pull this up just a little bit. Container h1, and I don't know if I've actually written my h1 just yet. No, I have not. So let's go ahead and do that right now, and all that's going to be is just a main something that says my portfolio or some portfolio, and we'll store that just right at the top of our container div. I just forgot to do that. I'm going to refresh the page. There it is, and now you see it showing up. Let me add our code back, and now you can see our h1 tag. So let's write a little bit of code to style that heading tag. We'll say I'm going to give it a color of 474747, and that's going to give it just kind of a darker gray so it's not so harsh. And I'm going to give it a margin of 0.4 ems on the top and bottom, and 0 on the left and right. Okay. All right. Now we're going to style our actual feature div, which houses this the full-size image. So we'll say featured, and I'm going to style first the heading 2 tag. Now let's come in here and see if I have anything stored within that heading 2. And you know what? I don't. I may come back and add something a little bit later, but at least for the time being, I'm just going to get rid of that. Okay, so now we're going to style the heading 2 tag. Now I haven't written this code just yet, but basically what that's going to do is when a user clicks on one of these thumbnails, it's going to load that image up into our feature div, and then the heading 2 tag is going to contain whatever is in the alt value of this thumbnail. So if this thumbnail has is named coins, as I know it is, this full-size coin image is going to show up, and then a heading 2 tag is going to fade in that says coins. Okay, so it essentially gives you the title. Now what I'm going to do for now is skip that, because we can do that a little bit later and you can see more of a product. But if I add code right now, you won't see any difference because we haven't written any JavaScript for that. So let's style our heading feature tag, our main feature div, and we're going to set the position to relative and give it a height of 500 pixels. I'm sorry, a height of actually 378 pixels. And I'm going to set overflow to hidden. That may not be necessary. We may take that out later. Might remove. Haven't decided just yet. Okay, let's scroll down just a bit and let's work on our options div. Our options unordered list rather, a little bit more, and that's going to style each of these thumbnails. So UL with an ID of options. And I'm going to add a background, and the background is going to be equal to just kind of a light grayish blue, and then the URL is going to be images/bottom.jpg. I'm going to we're going to repeat it repeat it horizontally. And I want it 0 from the left, but I want it to go at the very bottom of our unordered list container. So I'm going to set the vertical to 100% to make sure it goes to the very bottom. And if we come down here, you can see, at least I think you can see on the screencast, you'll see that white to grayish gradient going. Once I'm going to set overflow to hidden, and that's because we're going to float all of our list items to the left. So when you float an item, you need to clear it, and an easy way to clear it is to apply overflow hidden to the parent wrapping element. So we'll set margin, and the top margin is going to be 1 ems, and then 0 for the left, right, and bottom. I'm going to set a padding all around it of 0.5 ems just to push those images off from the left, because if I set it to 0, as you can see, it's going to put those images right flush up against the edge. So I'm going to give a little bit of breathing room, and I'm going to set a border top solid, and it's going to be 8A, and a border bottom is 1 pix solid F5. Now, I hope you can see this change. On the bottom, I'm simply applying just a barely off-white stripe, and that just kind of gives it kind of a sharp feeling. And then at the top, I'm adding, you most likely won't be able to see this, but it's just, you know, a half a shade darker than this this E3 color. So it's very subtle, but I think it helps somewhat. Okay, now let's style each of our list items. Options, LI. And we're going to float each list item to the left. And I'm going to set a width. If you remember, I told you each of the thumbnails is going to be 50 pixels by 50 pixels. So what I'm going to do here is kind of a way to save time. I'm going to actually set the width of our list item to 60 pixels, so 10 pixels larger. And I'm going to set the height to 60 pixels. And that will kind of, rather than having to add padding and kind of fooling around with it, it'll kind of automatically add a little bit of spacing. Okay, and zoom out, and now you'll see that spacing in just a little bit, by the way. And now I'm going to add a list style, and that's going to be none to get rid of the bullets. And just for the record, we'll get rid of this thumbs DB. I'm not sure how that came up, but I'll get rid of it. And then finally, I want to give the user a little bit of feedback to know that they can click on these thumbnails. Now, it's working in Firefox, but just to make sure, I'm going to make sure the cursor is set to pointer, just to make sure that it works in all the different browsers. And then finally, when the user hovers over one of these images, I want to give him a little bit more feedback, maybe just kind of a border, just to let them know which image they are hovering over. So I'll do options, and this will only work in modern browsers, but that's okay. It's hardly essential. So when the user hovers over a list item, let's write some styling for the image tag that's within that list item. And we'll set a border. It's going to be equal to 2 pixels solid gray. And that's fine. Within each image, and once again with this screencast I don't think you'll be able to see it, but each image is now has a border on it. What else? Let's do options, li. Let's also style the images, and I'm going to set the width to 50 pixels. Now they already are 50 pixels, I think. Actually no, looks like I set them to 100, so my mistake. When you use this, you'll want to make sure that the thumbnails you create are 50 pixels, but just to make sure, I'm going to go ahead and hard code that in. Okay? So probably not best practice, but for this situation it works just fine. So now you can kind of see our markup is slowly getting there pretty quickly. Slowly getting there pretty quickly makes no sense. Alright, continuing on, and then finally I'm going to add a selected class, and that's just going to, when the user clicks on one of these thumbnails, we're going to add some styling just to let the user know what image is currently selected. And I haven't added that just yet, but we'll go ahead and create it now. So create a class of selected, and once again I'm just going to add this exact same border. Alright, makes sense, doesn't it? And that should do it for our CSS. Not too much. So I'm going to copy that, come back to my solution, and paste it in to my style sheet. Okay, so let's go back and edit our thumbnail section. If you remember, I set this anchor tag equal to nothing for now, but now we can go back and work on it. Now the reason I'm adding an anchor tag at all is, let's go back. Remember, when I'll refresh the page to reflect our changes. Remember, when the user clicks on one of these images, it's going to load that image into this featured section, but it's going to use jQuery to do that. So for instance, what if the user does not have JavaScript enabled? Well, in that situation, I'm just going to link to the full-size image, and that way they'll just be directed to a new page that shows the image. You know, it's not pretty, but it's fine. Okay? If they're not using JavaScript, trust me, they're very used to it by now. So, within my anchor tag, the href is going to be equal to, and I'm going to close that off, and I'm going to append featured directory, and then scan I, and then open my quote back up, close the href quotation, and close the anchor tag. Okay. So let's go over this. I'm going to write this out because I think it really helps. Href equals featured directory. So featured directory equals images slash featured. And I'm doing it this way because that way, if you change your directory, all you have to do is change it in one place. So href equals images slash featured, and then scan I. So scan I is going to be equal to whatever value of I we are currently on in the loop. And remember, let's say we're on I equals 4, so that would be 0, 1, or actually period would be 0, period would be 1, so let's say that would be 3, 4. Coffee would be 4. So this would be equal to coffee.jpg. Now remember, part of what I set up was that these need to have the exact same file name. So in this case, coffee will also be equal to 4 up here. Okay? I'm sorry. Totally off. Since we have coffee.jpg up here, it's still going to select the correct image, but in this case, it's going to select the full-size image instead of the thumbnail. Okay? So that makes sense. Are there more advanced ways to do it? Yes, but this will work just fine, and then you can slowly complicate it at your discretion. So the final step is just to write a little bit of JavaScript that will take the image that's clicked and load it into our featured section. So what I'm going to do is go back to my JavaScript folder, and I'm going to create a new JavaScript file, and I'll call it scripts.js. And the first thing that I need to do is import this into my solution. And it's js/scripts.js, so I'll just change that. And let's write some jQuery. When the document's ready to be manipulated, we're going to start with the preload, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to skip that just for now, and we'll come back to it. So, create a couple spaces. So, when get the UL with an ID of options, when one of those images within it is clicked, let me add my quotation. When one of those is clicked, let's write a function. And first, remember we're going to add that class on, but every time an image is clicked, that image is going to have that selected class applied. So I want to make sure each time it's clicked, any other images within our within our thumbnails is removed. That way we don't have 5 different thumbnails that have that border around. So we'll get UL li options, if I can type, li img dot remove class. Okay, so it's kind of a safety precaution, but I think it's essential. And then, I don't know why my indenting's all screwed up today. And then we're going to get this, meaning the image, the thumbnail that was clicked. So the image thumbnail that was clicked, and we're going to add that class in. Okay, that way we can be sure only the image, only the thumbnail that is clicked has that class at any given time. Okay, next I'm going to do var image name. It's going to be equal to get this dot attribute, and we're going to grab the alt attribute. So let's analyze this. Get this, the image that was clicked, and get its alt value. So let's come in here, and when an image is clicked, let's say for instance, I don't know, let's say the crayons image is clicked. So image source is going to be equal to tn/crayons. Alt is going to be equal to scan I. Now that's going to be equal to the file name. So that would be equal to crayons.jpg. So image name in this situation equals crayons.jpg. Next, we're going to create a Jquery function. So we're going to do a jQuery.preload image. Actually, you know what? I'm not even going to bother doing that. We might do that in a future tutorial. I don't think I'm going to worry about that. We're going to get featured img.attribute is going to be equal to, the source is going to be equal to images/featured/ and I'm going to append image name that we just pulled. Okay, so we're going to get that featured image. So we're going to get this image and change its source. And that source is going to be equal to images/featured/ in that example, crayon.jpg. So images/featured/ crayons.jpg. Next, I'm going to do var chopped equals image name dot split, and the split is going to be a period. So what this is going to do is split is actually very similar to explode with PHP. So remember, if image name is crayons.jpg, calling split is going to split it however we tell it to. So I'm going to say use any period that you find as the split. So here it's going to split it into crayons and JPG. So obviously chopped has now become an array. So chopped 0 would be equal to crayon, and then chopped 1 would be equal to JPG. Okay, so it's just a way of separating, and what I'm basically doing is slicing off that prefix, and there's many ways that you can do that. So we're going to get featured h2 dot remove I'll tell you why we remove it in just a second. And then let's get our feature div again. And I'm going to add just a little bit of information. I'm going to add prepend. And we could do append or prepend. I want to make sure it's on the top. So I'm going to prepend a heading 2 tag. And I'm going to give it a class of description. But you know what? I'm not going to give it a class. It's not needed. And I'm going to append as the text. I'm going to do chopped 0. And remember, in our example, chopped 0 equals crayons rather than crayons.jpg. Okay, and then I'm going to close out my heading 2 tag. And then finally, I'm going to do .children.h2. Don't worry, I'll go over all of this if you're new to jQuery. And then I'm going to fade it in 500. And then .fade to 200. This is a little strange. I was having a little bit of problem, and this actually took care of it for me. And close that out. So grab our feature div that wraps the full-size image, and we're going to prepend a heading tag. And the heading tag is going to have a value equal to the file name of whatever thumbnail was selected. And then I want to fade that heading tag in. So in order to access that heading tag, I have to first go children, get the heading 2 tag, and then fade it in. And then I'm just going to fade it to 0.6 opacity over the course of 200 milliseconds, which is like 1/5 of a second, so it's almost immediate. And the reason I added featured this remove line right here is, let's say the user clicks on one thumbnail, then the feature div is going to append a heading 2 tag. Now let's say they click on another thumbnail. Well, feature div is going to append another heading tag, and we don't want multiple heading tags, so I'm going to make sure every time a thumbnail image is clicked, we remove whatever heading tag is within our feature div. And then finally, because our image is wrapped in an anchor tag, I want to make sure that it doesn't send us anywhere because we're using JavaScript. If JavaScript's disabled, we do want it to send the user just to that image file. But if they have JavaScript enabled, we don't want them to do anything because we're going to do it for them. So get UL with an ID of options, LIA, and when that clicked, just run a quick function, and we'll do return false. And that's it. Clean this up real quick. You know, nothing too complicated. I hope that makes sense. Let's see if I made any mistakes. It's very possible. Scan folders. I'm going to refresh my page. And I still got to get rid of that thumbs.db. Okay, so let's say I click on my crayon, it loads my crayons. But now, you see right there, crayons is showing up above it. And if you remember, the reason is because when I was creating my styles, I purposely skipped styling that heading 2 tag so I could show you what specifically we were styling. So let's go ahead and take care of that right now. Let's come down and featured heading 2. I'm going to set a width of it to 100%. And we're going to position it absolutely. And just for your information, the reason I set position relative up here to feature div is because if I removed this, you're going to see crayons would actually would not be displaying correctly. So like if I set top 0, you see there, it's not going to display correctly. So I want to make sure crayons is contained within our feature div. And in order to do that, we have to add position relative. And that pulls it down, as you can see. So I'm going to position it at the bottom of our div. I'm going to make sure there's no margins on our heading tag at all. I'm going to set a line height of like 1.3 ems is fine. Give it some padding all around of 0.2 ems. And then I'm going to set a background color of black. And initially, I don't want it to display at all. And then text align is center. Actually, I might be able to get rid of that display none. And then finally, let's set the color to white. Okay, and that is pulling our image name like so. Now the only other thing is I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a hack. Normally I might go get a transparent PNG to take care of this, but I'm just going to use a few browser hacks, which is perfectly fine, by the way. So we'll do filter, alpha, but you might want to put these in a separate style sheet. For the sake of expediency, I'm not going to do that. And alpha, I believe it's opacity equals 60. We're going to bring it down to about 0.6 or 60%. And then let's do some of the other browsers as well. So Moz opacity is going to be 60. And then let's also do opacities 0.6. Okay, and now, once again, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but now our background is transparent and you can see our image below it. So I'm going to hit Control-A and Control-C to copy this, come back to my solution, paste our new code into my style sheet, and once again, let's refresh the page. Let me zoom in just a little bit. We have a little more real estate. Not very much, actually. Okay, so... And once again, you can see here, a lot of those images, I just repeated them just so we could have more to work with. So a lot of these are the exact same image. So I'm going to click on this coffee cup, and it loads coffee cup and brings up my image. I'm going to click the crayon, and it loads in. Hit cupcakes, loads in. The hand shaking, loads in. Okay? So it's nothing too complicated. I'm not giving you anything really advanced. You can do that on your own. But you can see here, all of this information is being stored within that folder. So all we need to do if we ever wanted to edit it is just change the images and update the folder. So for instance, let's say I want to get rid of, I don't know, let's get rid of car. And I think image 1 is that car 2. And then I'll get rid of this and this. And I'm going to hit Control-X just to cut those out. Save it. All right, let's do a delete. So we're going to delete those images. Save it. Refresh the page. And now those car images have removed. And also, obviously, if you do a new project and you want to upload a new photo, if you're a photographer, you just add those two files and PHP will scan those and take care of it. So the only final thing I need to do is take care of getting rid of this thumbs.db that it's being pulled. And the way I'll do that is just make sure that the image in the folder is an image format. So I'll take care of that right now. Okay, so let's go ahead and get rid of this thumbs.db file. And the way we can do that, obviously I could just go ahead and delete it, but the way we can do that is we can make sure that only JPEGs are displayed here and anything else is just shuffled aside. So what I can do here is if scan I does not equal period and it doesn't equal period, we'll run some code, and I'm just going to add one more if statement. And I'm going to say if... we'll use, in this instance, let's use a string position. So we'll do strpos, and this finds the position of the first occurrence of a string. So if string position, and let's scan I, and then compare that to .jpg. If that doesn't equal false, then run that code. Okay? Otherwise, it'll just do nothing. The code won't run at all. So if scan I, remember, let's say that's crayons.jpg. If we're gonna check the position, and if we found .jpg, it'll run. So meaning if it's not false, if it did return true, let's run this code. However, if it didn't find JPG, don't do anything. And what you might want to do, I'm just going to keep it simple for the screencast because they're all JPEGs, but you also might want to do something like or, and then do it again, and then replace JPEG with a PNG or GIF. We'll just keep it JPEG. This is just a tutorial. Anyway, so let's go back and see if that did the trick. Refresh the page. And there, it slices off our image. Click on our image. We can still filter through our images, and you guys can add all of any kind of fade functionality or anything like that. So that is the tutorial for this week. It's might be a little more simple for some of you, yet for others it might be somewhat eye-opening. So what we did here is we used PHP to scan our folders and dynamically create markup depending on how many files we have. And then when the user clicked on one of those thumbnails, we used JavaScript to change the image. Okay? And this fade information, we probably don't even need that. Yeah, you know what? You could probably just get rid of the fade because I ended up not using it like I had hoped. So let's go over this JavaScript. Anything important? When the user clicks on an image, get rid of the selected class. Let's see if I added selected. Yeah, you can see it. You just can't see it on this JavaScript. I'm sorry, on this small screen. So go back, add a class as selected, grab the file name, change the source of our full-size image to the new file, and then cut it up and add our heading 2 tag. Very simple stuff, So next week we're going to get back into our photo site that we worked on and get that completed. So thank you so much for watching, and do me a favor. Come check out themeforest.net. This is a site where if you're a buyer or an author, you can come on. If let's say you're a buyer, you need to you got to get a site done quickly for a client. You can come here, browse through our files. You can purchase them. Some of them are even as low as $10. So let's say you have a client that has $200 and they need a site by tomorrow. You can just come here, purchase one of our sites for $10. That's it, $10. You can have your site, you can edit it, and you can be done with it, and make a great hourly wage. On the other hand, let's say you're an author and you create sites, or let's say you've created sites that never got used. You can come on here, sign up to be an author. It's completely free. You upload your theme, and every day you'll just start making money. I promise there's no catch to it. It's just a way to make some great money. So if you are a web developer and you create websites all the time, there's no reason for you not to be checking this out. I 100% recommend it. Okay? Thank you so much. Also, be sure to check nettoots.com for more tips and tutorials. And if you haven't already, do me a favor and subscribe to the RSS feed. See you next week. Bye.